All right. So hi, everyone. I'm here with Stephen Howard, the author of The City of Snow and Stars, which is coming out in just a few days, I believe, right?
Yes, the 7th.
Yay, I'm so excited. I pre-ordered like ages ago. So anyways, I just want to kind of set things up by saying this is going to be a bit of an interfaith discussion. Stephen is a Christian fiction author, and I am a bit of a pagan. So it should be really interesting having his perspective, because I really believe books in general are such a unique opportunity to see the way other people perceive the world and learn from other people, no matter who you are. So I'm really, really excited to hear your thoughts on your book and your creative process in general. Um, so the first thing I really want to hear about is your writing journey. You have put so much passion and hard work and discipline into it. I've been following you for a while, and I think it's really cool. So I want to hear about it in your own words.
Yeah. So my writing journey started back when I was a teenager. I despised writing. Like, I absolutely loathed it. I did not want to do it in any way, shape, or form. And so I was homeschooled, and the at one point I was just so far behind because I didn't enjoy school. We had one of our friends come over and tutor us in math and a little bit in writing and stuff. And so she was like, I want you to write a poem, and it needs to tell me what it is without actually saying what it is. I was like, how the frick does somebody do that? So I was like, because I was so new to this. And so I was like, okay, I grew up on Lord of the Rings. I grew up on Chronicles of Narnia. I grew up on Dune. Like, I grew up with like fantasy science fiction. And so I was like, swords. It's going to be a sword. That's what I'm going to do. But I did it. So the way that I did it was from the perspective of the sword being going from like iron ingot into the flames, back out, beat by the blacksmith, back in, forged, polished, the whole thing. It is my favorite poem that is now lost somewhere in the sands of time because I don't know where it is, and it hurts my soul. But that ignited a passion for writing. And so I immediately started doing a Chronicles of Narnia versus Lord of the Rings crossover fan fiction. And um, then after, I don't know, a few months to maybe close to a year, I was like, you know what? I want to write my own book, because if you publish fan fiction, you get sued. And I didn't want to really deal with the lawsuit at, 17. So I started creating my own fictional world, and pulling from Tolkien. Like, I wanted it to be big. I wanted it to be meaty. I wanted it to be filled with lore and awesomeness. No elves. Didn't want elves. It was a little bit cliche. And so that started the whole process. And then it went from one book, and then it went to two books, and then to three books. And then over time, I replotted it because I was like, oh, this sounds too much like my Narnia fan fiction. It sounds too much like Lord of the Rings. Because I was still developing, my author voice. And so fast forward to let's see, 2017 ish. I got on Wattpad, which is basically a giant nerddom for authors. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, you know what? I'm done with this story. I hate writing right now. I'm done with it. And so I'm going to go back to my first love, which is fan fiction. And I'm going to practice, and I'm going to test things on my readers like they're guinea pigs. And so I started with this idea that I had gotten of a deeper, darker, sadder, more depressing version of Gollum's backstory. That is now headcanon for everyone who's read it. And so my evil master plan worked. And so over that time, I started practicing and utilizing different tips that I had I had gleaned from Writing Excuses, the Writing Excuses podcast. It's got Brandon Sanderson, Dan Howard, Mary Robinette Kowal, and Howard Taylor, or Dan Wells. That's who the other one was. And so I was pulling all this information in. I was testing it out on my readers. And then in 2018, I injured my shoulder. My dominant hand, my left hand, I injured the shoulder. I tore the labrum, tore the lower pec muscle, could not use it. At the same time, my wife had a bunch of health issues. And so we had to like overnight move in with my in-laws. And then by January 2019, I was just super salty about the whole thing. And I was like, I got screwed out of my NaNoWriMo because I was on track to exceed 50,000 for that NaNoWriMo. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do JanoWriMo. It's not a thing, but I'm making it a thing. And I had done one of those Facebook, the first letter of your first name and the first letter of your last name, and then insert it into the predisposed thing. And I got The City of Snow and Stars. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. That was the book that I sat down and started writing, and I pumped out 50,000 words in 29 days in January of 2019. And that started the whole thing that became the book that is getting published in a few days. But I mean, that's the writing journey in a nutshell. I mean, there's so much that I've learned that, you know, as an editor, as a writing coach, that I try and give back to people and teach them, like, here's what not to do, over and over and over again until you drive yourself insane. So
yeah, I hear you. And then for anyone who's never done it, I know there will be plenty of writers who watch this, but if you've never written 50,000 words in a month, it is intense. Like, it is mentally exhausting.
It is this. So I kid you not. So during the whole publishing phase, not to like try and skip too far ahead here, but when I started the whole publishing thing, I was a month into my first round of revisions that I was supposed to get done in a month. And I had to start over. I had to rewrite the entirety of the book, which was 80,000 words at the time, because I didn't have enough world building. And I wrote 60,000 words in 3 weeks. And my brain was the consistency of mashed potatoes.
That sounds about right.
It was just, I've never experienced
you did it.
such. Yeah, it got done. But man, my brain, it took weeks to recover from that.
Makes you wonder why anybody writes.
I know. Yeah. It's what I tell my students, like, because I've worked with a lot of people. I always tell them, writing is the best, worst form of torture you will ever put yourself through.
Absolutely. So true. We'll talk more about publishing soon, but why don't you tell us about your novel first?
Yeah. So I'm so excited because this book turned out nothing like I had anticipated it being on the beginning. So it follows Trinia, who is she's 16 at the start of the book. She is one of the Air Gid, which is this at the time. I mean, they used to rule all of the lands of Wintonaith, and it's a fairly big place. I even added some meta humor in there where one of the characters is like, why is the world so big? That's me griping about my world building. But she is abused by her father, mentally and physically, and sexually by one of his advisors. And she has the ability to perfectly duplicate herself in mind and body, to the point where the other duplicates don't know that they are duplicates. Mm-hmm. And her father wants to use her power to rebuild the old Air Gid empire and crown himself king or emperor, because he's a narcissistic jerk. And so she goes on the run. Everything starts going wrong from the outset. And she ends up meeting a prince, the crown prince of Ungar, who faked his death and wants nothing to do with responsibility, is very morally gray. And then she meets Udar, who is this literal man of legend, his talking wolf, Mandar, who is just the broest of bros. And she meets Batani, the shapeshifter. And I mean, there is a cast of people in this book, and it's all about pains and traumas and how people can come alongside people who have gone through that. And I decided to tackle three main questions that I myself have had and continue to have at times in the second draft, which is the first one being abuse. One, in Christian fiction, it's just not there. It is overly sanitized, and most Christian movies in particular make Hallmark look good. They're just super sanitized. They're super cheesy. And I was like, this isn't going to be that kind of book. And so, I mean, I'm tackling physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse, all of which I have gone through. And so I'm not, expounding on or making up a lot of this. A lot of what Trini has gone through is actually what I have gone through. I put that into her character. The second one that I kind of address is human trafficking, because I'm a recovering porn addict. And so I got into recovery, and what I learned over the last 5 years that I've been in recovery is that pornography actually helps fuel human trafficking and the sex slave trade. And so that was a very hard pill for me to swallow when I kind of came to that realization that my addiction was actually feeding this. And we get to see some of that through the character's eyes, which leads to the kind of the big question, which is, why does God let bad things happen? And, right from the outset in the author's note, I tell my readers, I'm like, look, I don't have an umbrella answer, because honestly, there isn't one. I got an answer for my specific trauma and the specific things that I have gone through. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I have all of the answers for everyone, because everyone is a unique individual who has their own stuff that they have gone through. And so those were kind of the main three things. And you really see that in the characters. It's like they're all wrestling with faith and life, and like, why does the world just suck sometimes? And that's one of the fun parts about writing them, is that I get to put in my own questions and just kind of see what happens.
And that's so much to take in. It's really, I think you make a really good point about how sanitized Christian fiction tends to be. So I think it's really incredible that you're dealing with these really difficult themes, because even outside of the Christian faith, like, so many people struggle with these things. And so I think it's hugely relevant.
Yeah.
So you kind of answered some of my next questions, but do you want to expand on how your own spiritual journey influenced your writing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been a Christian since I was 6. And I mean, I remember the moment my parents, sitting down and explaining to me, what Jesus had done for me and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, sure, I was 6. And over time, and to give some additional context to this, like, my abuse started when I was 4, as far back as I can remember, as of the last kind of set of trauma memories that have come up over the last couple of years. So from 4 to 13, I was being sexually abused by my grandfather, and we lived with them. No one else knew, and I had suppressed it, apparently, to the point where I had no memory of it up until 2016. And when I was 13, I started the slide into pornography. And so, and then 2014, my grandma died. And then in 2018, I actually got to the point where I was so depressed that I almost killed myself. I was sitting on the edge of my bed with a loaded 45 ready to end it. And because I was depressed, I was severely depressed. I was emotionally numb. I wanted nothing to do with life. And I just figured everybody else would be better off without me. And it was one of the most impactful moments because like as I am like in my head staring over into this purple black abyss of nothingness, A, scared the shit out of me, and B, I felt God come in and just kind of pull me back, be like, I've got more for you than that. And life still sucked after that. I mean, I was still depressed. I still was dealing with coping mechanisms, still am, you know. But when I started writing and journaling, that was a place where I could pour out my pain on paper. And what God was able to do through that was he got to he would show me like I would be like, God, like I'm venting right now, and I was angry. Like when 2016, when I had these trauma memories resurface, there was a seething rage that I had that I did not know I could feel. And I mean, I poured it out on the paper, and it was directed towards God, but I was talking with him, talking through it with him. And he listened because he wasn't scared of my anger. He's like, yeah, I know. Tell me about it. Like, express it to me. Like, I'm big enough. It's okay. Like, my feelings aren't going to be hurt. And being able to do that and just kind of learning to walk in relationship and not doing religion, which is kind of what I grew up learning. And I kind of had to unlearn because I always felt like God was disappointed in me. And it was like, God was like, no, that's actually not the case. You don't know me. And so we got to kind of, you know, do that through my journaling, and especially during the course of rewriting this book. When I hit 20,000 words after a month, and I realized that I still had another 60 to go, roughly, I was like, God, this is impossible. And I saw very quickly how my pride and arrogance had led me to this point of, oh, crap, this book is not going to get published. And I was on my knees pleading in ways that I have never done before in my entire life. I was like, God, I need your inspiration for this because, like, I'm at a loss. My brain is cooked and I'm only 20,000 words in. And in a very supernatural way, like, the concepts that come across in those the entire other three-fourths of the book that all interweave together would have taken me months to plan, knowing how my writing style is based on, you know, 14 years of writing. It would have taken me months to do. And my editor was even like, I don't know how you pulled that off. And I'm like, I don't know either. I just know God, he took care of a lot of that because this stuff is freaking genius. And I'm mentally toast at this point. So yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, it is hard. And my faith and my writing journey, it's reflected in my characters. Like, the same pains and struggles and questions of faith that I wrestle with day in and day out, my characters share with me and they express.
It's really incredible. And I just kept thinking, like, talk about divine inspiration.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
yeah. People like, oh yeah, sure. Like, you just, they're like, no, I'm not playing that up. Like, there's no playing that up.
That's really awesome. And I cannot stand waiting for this book. I'm not gonna lie. And I'm really afraid it's gonna arrive at my house while I'm gone because I'm about to be gone for an extended period of time. So
oh man.
will be available in ebook.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's going to be on a special promo price for 99 cents for the first like 30 days.
Yes. I'll just support you
Yeah.
twice. Cool. So let's see. We touched on so much of this. Let's talk more about the reason you chose sexual addiction as a theme, because like that is a really difficult theme to approach. I want to hear about how you approach it and what you hope people take from it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. And I question God on that choice of topic more than once. The reason that I ultimately decided to kind of listen to what God had prompted me to do with that, but B, I mean, it was hard for me to write, because like I said, like a lot of the stuff that Trinia has gone through is stuff that I have personally gone through. You know, there, and this doesn't spoil any of the plot, but like there's a moment where Trinia is having a flashback, a nightmare of when the voice creeps into her bedroom and touches her on the arm. And that is what my grandfather would do. And so, I mean, he would come into my bedroom. And so, you know, a lot of these things reflect stuff that I've gone through. And, you know, over the course of 5 years of being in recovery for pornography addiction, the stuff that comes up when you're trying to heal can be unexpected and rather unpleasant. One of the reasons that this mattered to me so much is because, one, it's a YA. Content wise, it borders on NA, but it is written for a YA audience, because I have had the privilege of being able to talk with some teens after sharing my story with them. And they were asking me, they're like, how did you forgive him? Like, I'm going through this right now. Like, how did you cope? And I've had, since posting my first Medium article, and even just after sharing some of my stories, I've had people reach out to me and be like, yeah, I've gone through similar things. Like, thank you for saying something. And in particular, and I mean, really, it was with Christians in mind, because like I know the secular world deals with all of this, and they're a little bit more open about talking about it in some cases. Christians don't. They will put on the Sunday smile and I'm fine. Everything is great. So good. And I'm just like, bull. Because we're supposed to be perfect. And, you know, because if we're not, we're hypocrites. And honestly, there are thousands of hypocritical Christians. And I'm like, you know what? Guess what? I got my shit too. I got my own sets of brokenness. And that's actually one of the things the characters say in the book is everybody's a little broken, because we are. And I want to acknowledge the brokenness, because what I've found is when I'm sharing my story with somebody, which is not something I ever thought I would do, it was something that I couldn't not tell people. When I finally got to a place where I had healed enough, I was like, I have to tell people, because they have to know that there is hope, that someone is able to heal and to recover and to let go of those things. Is that I remember I was doing a men's group, and we told them there was one thing, and we kind of blindsided them with the fact we were talking about pornography, so they were a little floored. But I got up there and I shared my testimony, and the look on the guys' faces was priceless. It was absolutely priceless, because they were just like, we don't talk about this. We're guys. And somebody who was 40 years old was like, I've gone through similar stuff to him, and I've never told a single soul until today. And that is one of the things that I talk about in the author's note, is that I pour out my heart and soul onto the pages because I want people specifically who have gone through abuse to know that they're not alone, that they are seen, that they're heard, that their story matters, and that it's kind of like an unspoken permission to share their hurts because you're being vulnerable first. And that's something that I have learned over my years of recovery is being the first to be vulnerable allows people to be vulnerable in return. And sometimes they just need to get it off their chest. And so you'll have people reach out to you and they're like, I saw what you said and wow, like I haven't told anybody this before, but I don't know why I'm telling you. I know why. Is because they know I'm a safe person because I've just spilled everything and I've left nothing out. Like if anybody asks me my story, I'm going to tell them in all of the nitty gritty and really crappy details. And they were like, you're a Christian? I'll be like, yeah, I'm messed up too. Guess what? That's why I'm a Christian. It's because I'm messed up.
Thanks for being
but yeah.
That's really incredible. And I don't care what your background is, like to be that vulnerable and real is hard. And I think it's really
it is
that you're doing it. Like seriously, it makes me teary eyed. So let's talk more about the book itself. Just kind of shifting gears here because we talked a lot about themes and why you wrote what you wrote. So I want to hear about your world building process, your giant world building process.
Yeah. So the world building is kind of like this chaotic madness that it's always ongoing, which is one of the things I love about world building. So this world that the city of Snow and Stars takes place in is actually the same world that I originally started creating back when I was 16. It's just expanded. So it's actually gotten bigger since I first started it. And for those who pre-order, like they get the full color map and stuff. And so like that entire world, like that is where all of these books will take place because there's 12 total. They're just broken up into 4 different trilogies. And so, you know, the things that I wanted to do is I didn't want to go like your standard elf, standard dwarf, orc, trolls, stuff like that. Like I wanted something that felt a little more unique, a little more that fit my world. And so I have shapeshifters, the Eomliad, and so they can shapeshift into any creature that they know of, and it's a lot of fun to have that ability to kind of toy around with, and I got lots of fun things planned for the other parts of the story, and it comes out in this one too. I have the Air Gid, which for all intents and purposes could be like a half elf if you wanted. Like they don't have pointy ears, but they are long lived. You know, they will live several hundred years. Back at the very beginning of this world, they lived for, you know, up to 1,000 years. That's not the case anymore. I have, and this won't be for like 3rd trilogy, something like that. The Graben folk, who would be more of the equivalent of dwarf. So there's lots of different things, and I wanted fantasy creatures. I love fantasy creatures. And so I've got the Skasa, which are basically like giant centipede like critters. I have Hellrex, which like imagine if like one of the cave trolls and the Hulk had a baby. It's kind of like that. They're not really smart and they fly into a rage off the handle and they will crush literally anything. That's a Hellwreck. I've got the Bavonsi, which are banshees. And so the Bavonsi are actually based in Scottish Gaelic and Irish folklore. So if you look up the Bob-on-Sea, it's like the female vampire, which makes like the Twilight vampires look like, you know, disco balls and poop and Skittles, like just absolutely more 10 times more terrifying. And they are seductresses, and like they're just bad ladies. There's Trifels, which are basically like big three-headed, like think like not quite Hydra, not quite that big, but like the size of a horse with three razor sharp filled teeth heads and giant claws and just a really, really bad temperament, like very bad temperament. There's Telghosts, which are kind of like she ghosts, and they're the result of what happens when a Bob-on-Sea seduces a woman. They basically like drain the life out of her, and she goes around just draining the life out of everybody else. Like it's just kind of a really crappy way to go. And so yeah, it's like I wanted this to feel big. I wanted lore. I wanted history. And I made up the history in 4 days. During the writing process, actually, like the vast majority of the world building that I did was in like 4 days before I had the world building stream for all of the backers. I just did it in 4 days and whipped out the freaking slides as well. So yeah, it's just, and then I continued kind of adding, a little bit of layers here, a little bit of layers there. And I'm excited because book 2, we'll be able to kind of dive into a little more of the political landscape of this world, which I didn't get to kind of touch on as much. I got to kind of show it in its breadth, but I'm actually going to get to show a little bit more in book 2. So I'm super excited about that.
Heck yeah. Awesome.
And if it was not for Campfire Pro, I'd be dead.
What's Campfire?
So Campfire Pro, like I'm not sponsored by them or anything, although if you're watching, I'd be cool. But it's a software that you can like track. So character profiles, world building, if you get the world building pack, species, cultures, timelines, that was a godsend. I mean, seriously, like it was an amazing tool that I could just dump all of my thoughts and then just rearrange everything how I needed it to be. And that's how I outlined the entire 9,000 years of world history that I've created thus far.
I am going to have to check that out because I need something like that in my life.
It is amazing.
It's crazy how like worlds just expand when you're writing so quickly.
Yeah.
It's a really fun process though.
It is. I love it so much. Because it's like the way that I've described it to the people I've worked with is that like when you're writing, I mean, fantasy, science fiction, you name it. People have certain expectations and they are looking for big, cool things. But sometimes authors get stuck on just the big, cool things. And I tell them, I was like, honestly, like 98% of world building is all of the fine details of consistency. As you're moving from place to place in your world, having the consistency of clothing, language, those types of things, the feel of the world has to remain consistent 98% of the time. Then that leaves you room for what I call BAST, which is the 2%, which is the big ass shiny things. Those are the things that make that genre, and the reader expectations are like, oh, whoa, that was awesome. And then the rest of the time, it's consistent in the other 98% of it. But you have those moments where you show off those things, and then the readers are just like, yeah, that was awesome. And then they keep going.
I love it. That's some good advice too. So you talked a lot about your characters already. So instead of asking you to rehash anything, I'm curious if you have a favorite.
Oh, that's mean.
I know.
I have favorites. I have favorites for different reasons.
Okay.
Trinia is my favorite because you see the harshness that life can throw at somebody. And one of the points that is made is that everybody has a breaking point. And I love Trinia because I get to show how far somebody can be pushed. I love Udar because he is just this cantankerous, bitter, grumpy guy who reflects me in many ways. He's actually based off my original character that I created back when I was 16. And he very much is me. He's the one who's asking God why. Like, he serves him, but he asks God why. He's angry, he's bitter. You actually see him have dialogue with God in the book. And it's super powerful because he's just kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to do my thing. And I love him for that reason, because I get to showcase like that part of my struggle through him. Jaden, I love because he's kind of the person you get to see everybody else through, but particularly Trinia. And he has these internal monologues that don't run on for super long because I hate like pages and pages of monologues. But he just has these times where he's just talking to himself. And you're just like, man, yeah, I do that. Like, I'd totally be the one to just like talk through a problem and then like chide myself. So I love that about him. And Batani, I love because she annoys the living bejesus out of Udar. She is the person who just keeps poking no matter what, but she's also like extremely loyal. She is like the best friend. Mandar, I probably, both of my favorite quotes are from Mandar. And because he is that rock for every person in the group. He is the person who is consistent and there. And he's the only one, as noted by Trinia, who she sees actively serving God in any way and actually walks the walk that he talks on a consistent, never-ending basis. But he still has his doubts. He still has his moments of struggle. But I love him for that because he's just kind of the person, Wolf, that everybody kind of just goes to. Yeah, there's a lot of characters, but like I love those characters in particular because they're so much fun to explore and they have such a richness of character. I mean, my whole goal was to have each character feel like you could sit down and have a cup of coffee with them. And like you could have dialogue and conversation and it'd be good conversation and they would feel authentically human.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm excited to see how it comes through. I'm sure you did a great job. All right. So the next question I wanted to ask you was about your publishing journey. From my perspective, you took a pretty unique path. So I'm really curious how that all played out and how you came to, is it an indie publisher? Like, you'll have to kind of elaborate a little for me too.
Yeah. So everybody thought I was nuts, which is not anything out of the ordinary, but so I actually started working with them, freelancing as a developmental editor. And so I watched and I got to work with my students for 3 months, and then I watched them move on into the publishing phase. And I didn't know a lot about the publishing phase when I first started with them because my whole focus was just the editing. But I watched as they did crowdsourcing. I bought two of my students' books to help support them on their journey. They're actually going to be two of my special guests. They're actually going to be the first guests that speak on my launch event. So I'm super excited to have them kind of circle back around. And so this whole idea of crowdsourcing, I was like, I could get behind that. I really like that idea. And so I talked more with New Degree Press, and they're like, so we're a hybrid publisher. Now, unlike some hybrid publishers, they don't take anything for your book, for the creative rights. You retain 100% of it because they cover their costs during the fundraising campaign. If you choose to do that, you can choose to just pay for the whole publishing experience, which I don't have that kind of money. So I was like, fundraising it is. But talking with them and hearing about what they're wanting to do, and like their goal is not just to help people publish their book, but to help them do it well. They have a very genuine heart for helping authors. So they've helped over 600 authors publish their books in the last 3 years. And they have 3 different tiers for crowdsourcing. So there is a $500 deposit that you put down that covers the cost of the campaign and the editing and the prepping and the graphics that they give you for the campaign. That it is a refundable deposit if you hit the second tier of fundraising. So you get that back. I was like, all right, I get my money back and I cover the course of my book. Okay. So started fundraising. They work with you to create a book trailer. They have more templates and checklists than I ever want to see again in my life. But it's all to help you publish like a second time author. And so I went through the process of, crowdsourcing. You get to offer special perks. You get early access, you get to beta read for those who want to. I offered maps for, full color maps of the entire world for one of the pay tiers. People get just the early access. They get to see the process. They get to see, as I document the journey of like, hey, this is what we're doing this week. Hey, this is what we're doing this week. So it's kind of, like a special group thing that you get to do with these pre-order people that traditional publishers don't necessarily allow you to do. They don't allow you to give away, certain chapters or really much of anything, as far as I'm aware of, to early beta readers, or even just kind of to share what's going on. And so I was like, I want to be involved with my reading community. Like that's who I am. And so doing that, fundraising it, then it moved on to revisions. So there's 2 rounds of revisions lasting approximately 9 weeks, roughly. So you get your acquisition editor feedback. I was proactive, and I got 3 betas who read the entire second novel or second draft, and they were like, we need more world building. Well, that happened to be what the acquisition editor said too. I was like, okay, I need to start over and rewrite this entire thing to have the world building. And I was utterly lost for the first 10 chapters. Then after that 10 chapters, I was like, oh, I was building a 3-act structure. It needs to be a 4-act structure. It needs to be approximately 2,000 words on average to hit what I want to hit. And then boom, here we go. And then I still ended up with more words than I did. I didn't cut anything. In terms of word count, like I made up for the word count that I had originally cut out. Whole swaths of chapters gone, still to be replaced by much better content. I will say that. And then there was the copy editing, the proofreading, there was the cover design, which they make you do a cover design exercise, and they have lots of exercises for you to do to help you get into the mindset of publishing. I hadn't ever thought of what my cover would look like. I didn't even think my book would ever be published. So why bother with a cover? Now I was forced to sit down and really think about it. And then they teach you how to do outreach, how to get podcast interviews, how to do social media, how to write up author series articles. I mean, there is a wealth of information that they just give to you to use and to work with. And I didn't know all of that side of it. But, you know, having gone through this, you know, I would absolutely choose to go through them again. One, because my cover designer was amazing. He did a phenomenal job. And I want him to be able to do book 2 and 3. I was like, I'm going to request you personally. So I mean, the publishing journey has just been fantastic, and you're doing it with like 200 plus other authors, you know, and so you really are able to kind of get to know other people. You're supporting other people. You're writing reviews for, you know, each other. Nothing super long, just, you know, like a paragraph or a sentence or two that just be like, hey, based on this and this is how I did it. You know, based on your first chapter and your introduction, like, yes, I want to read more. It compels me. I'm excited about it. And I focus primarily on giving feedback for other fiction authors because we're in the minority. NDP is based out of Georgetown. And Professor Eric, who runs Creator Institute, it's kind of his class. So he's got a class that he does at Georgetown. And then there's all of the other authors that kind of join up. So, I mean, it was just a wonderful experience. My marketing and revisions editor was absolutely fantastic. She basically yelled at me today and told me to go take a nap because I listed out all the things that I was doing. And she's like, Stephen, go take a nap. I mean it. I was like, all right, fine.
You need that voice.
Yeah, seriously. Cause I'm like, you know, what else am I supposed to be doing? She's like, taking a nap. Stop it. Like, you've already gotten everything else lined up. Knock it off. Rein in the ponies just a tad.
It sounds like a really unique publishing experience too. I've never heard of anybody going through this type of process with a publisher or on their own, obviously.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And now I'm super curious to go check them out. I've not heard of them.
Yeah. No, it's there. And actually, during my book launch, the founder of New Degree Press, Brian Bees, and Professor Eric are actually going to be two of my special guests that'll be talking about New Degree and Creator Institute for people. Because, like, a lot of people have accused me of promoting a vanity press, particularly within Facebook writing groups and stuff. I'm like, A, you literally did not look them up. You're just yelling at me. B, like, I've worked with them on the other side of it. And so I know their process. They don't take anything from my book. I wanted to retain creative rights to my book. That was something that was important to me. It's not necessarily important for everybody all of the time. That was just mine. And so the fact that I could fundraise what I needed, because I wanted to originally do self-publishing, but I was like, I can't afford it. To do it the way that I want to do it and to do it right, I'm going to need several $1,000s. I do not have that. This allows me to do it. So I'm getting professional editing. I'm getting professional cover design. I'm getting to learn how to do effective book marketing that will continue to help me later on. Why wouldn't I want to do that? And so, you know, I mean, their contract is a single page. Like, you can't get any more simple than that.
That's really cool. And I hope anybody listening who's interested in publishing will check them out and just check out all your options in general, because we have an incredible number of options. And like, if you are on a tight budget, there's still a path to publishing.
Absolutely.
So that is really, really cool. And I'm going to like run and check them out after this. I am, by the way, I'm like the laziest backer ever. I'm like, I really want to support you. I want your book, but I have been so crazy busy that I have been not following.
And you know, I had one of my student who's going to be speaking. She's like, I'm sorry, I'm a failure. I was like, it's okay. Not everybody, A, wants to beta read. B, I also know that a lot of people are busy. It's a busy time. This has been a wacky year to begin with. Yeah. I'm like, so like, it's okay. Like, the fact is, you supported this entire time, you know, just by listening. And, you know, like, being able to just share it with people to begin with was a win, you know? So it's like, to me, it's a win regardless of, you know, how many comments or likes I get on a post, or, you know, it, that part doesn't matter to me so much as people are enjoying the journey with me, and people are, you know, enjoying the content, the videos, the characters, and then, you know, soon, like the full book, like the whole kit and caboodle will be here soon.
So I'm curious, have you started the next book?
I've finished the prologue. Yeah, I finished the prologue. I sat down, and this was actually shortly after I finished and submitted to proofreading, I think, which was back in October. Yeah, I sat down, and the idea was just bugging me, because I've got big things planned for book 2. One of my big plot reveals, which I'm just going to be tickled pink, because I can already foresee the brain just going.
Yes.
And so, like, the prologue for it will be a teaser for that, and of what is to come within just the first 10 chapters of book 2. I have it already planned out for the first 10 chapters. After that, it's still up in the air of like what direction I want to go with it. But those first 10 chapters will have a major plot reveal that was teased in the prologue. That's teased in this book too. And I'm just so excited to get to that point.
Guessing as I'm reading then. And I'm the world's worst guesser, so I guarantee you I won't spoil it for myself. So.
I can tell you the name of book 2.
Oh,
yeah, it's The City of Stone and Sorrow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It
doesn't get better.
Titles. Very cool. So the last thing I would like you to tell us is, how can people find your book if they're interested? How can they support you? Where are you on the interwebs?
I am basically everywhere on the interwebs. So you can find me, if you search for The Editing Bard, you'll probably find my profile somewhere. That's my business name. I just kind of lumped it all together. So I'm on YouTube, The Editing Bard. I've done videos for helping authors. I do a lot of live streams. I can be very verbose in my live streams, which is why they all last forever. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. I'm on Instagram. I'm basically everywhere. And I do have a official author site. I'm still kind of getting it built up to where I want it to be. But sdhowardauthor.com will lead you to my website. Right now it's got a countdown. I got big plans for that one as well. That will probably start happening more in the new year. But I'm building like the about the book, character profiles, with all of the major players, and a little bit of tantalizing tidbits for them. The book will be available basically where every book can be bought. It's going to be on Amazon. The ebook should be live this Monday, the 7th. The paperback, depending on how long Amazon wants to drag its feet, should theoretically be available by the end of the week. And then, I mean, it's also going to be available on Kobo. So, I mean, you'll Barnes and Noble, it'll pretty much be everywhere you can purchase a book. And then I'll have my book launch celebration on December 18th. That's going to last 5 hours. I'm the only author out of this cohort that is doing that long, because everyone's like, why? Why would you do that? And I'm like, why wouldn't I do that? Shoot, I get 10 people to talk to. It's not even about my book. I get to talk about other people's books. This is fantastic. My wife will get to join me live for a married to an author session, where she gets to do Q&A and be like, she's like, what am I going to say? I'm like, you just tell them what it's like to put up with me day in and day out, talking to you about things that don't make sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So super excited for that. It's going to be a fantastic event. And then, after that, I'll be kind of starting work on draft one for the City of Stone and Sorrow, starting to plan that. And then if it's possible, then I'll submit it again in June and be publishing again next Christmas.
Woo. It's very exciting. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I hope other people get excited about your book. I know I am. I'll tag you and add some links below so people can find you easily.
Yeah.
Congratulations. It's almost launch.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited.
All right. Well, have a wonderful evening and thanks again.
Thank you. You too.